afternoon, students. Welcome back to this session. As I concluded in the previous session, I clearly said that in this session we are going to look at sourcing and managing of suppliers, which is an activity of the procurement department. The procurement department obviously has to, in the process, there is that concept or that step whereby suppliers has to be identified and they are selected. So to go quick into our class today, or our lecture today, let's look at clearly what is sourcing of suppliers. In our definition here, we say sourcing is the process of identifying, evaluating, and selecting suppliers to provide goods and services. As I mentioned before, in the procurement, there is that step whereby you reach and you meet a supplier. So in the sourcing process, it covers some steps which are also in the procurement process. And in the sourcing, there are basically 3 or 4 steps. The first is to identify where these suppliers are, to know their capability, and if they can provide the product you need. Then we evaluate them. This evaluation depends. It could be based on the price, technical know-how, and other elements that are involved. So we shall select. Organizations have different procurement policies. Some look at the lowest price, or the supplier who provide the lowest price is the one to be selected in the evaluation process. So after selection, the supplier is awarded the contract. Let's look at the objectives. Why do we have to go through the supply selection or supply sourcing process? It's to ensure reliability in supply, to ensure quality in the supply, and also there is value in the supply system. This is also very important when we look at the supply, or when we are doing the supply sourcing process or selection process. You can say supply selection, supply sourcing process. So our aim is to ensure there is reliability, there is quality, and there is also value for money. Supply management also involves going on evaluation and collaboration to maintain robust and efficient supply chain. So there is the concept of supplier management within the supplier selection. After the supplier is given a contract, there is the management part that has to come. We have to control, we have to manage his work. That is through evaluating and collaborating to ensure that the supply process runs smoothly. This control or this evaluation is based on the contract signed. The contract will guide. In many organizations, they have what we call contract managers who mostly do this part. Levels of sourcing, they are very different. As we mentioned before, the sourcing of supplier is in different steps. We have long term, which is made at the strategic level, which also focus on high risk and high value items. If the items are of high risk and items are of high value, that decision has to be made at the strategic level at the top level of decision making. Meaning the top managers of a company or an organization, or could be the board of directors, are the ones to make that decision on that product that has to be procured, or that supplier that has to provide that service. If it involves introduction of policies and partnership, it involves global procurement, it involves high capital purchase or high capital intensiveness. That decision has to be made at the strategic level. Then at the middle or low level of sourcing, the decision that has to be made, it's a decision that is for a short term, or a decision that involves low risk procurement of low risk items. Also a decision that is focused on non-critical items that are not so much needed, that are not so much critical in that, or so much needed, or so much important in the production or in the company running. That decision can be made at the tactical or operational level, middle or low level in simple language. Also decisions that concern with how and where to procure. These decisions can be made at the middle level or at the low level of management. Let's look at the strategies that are involved in sourcing activities, or what activities are involved in the sourcing, whatever language we put there. There is partnership sourcing. That decision has to be involved, and that decision is at the strategic level, which involves building long-term relationship. We have what we call reciprocal sourcing, which is a mutual exchange between companies. This is whereby the companies come together, or the supplier and buyer come together to agree for mutual benefits, whereby everyone has to benefit from each other. Then we have intra-company trading, where two companies decide to trade themselves internally, business between themselves. You do the trading between themselves. Then we have ethical consideration, whereby a decision is involved social responsibilities, environmental or fair labor laws. Such decision has to be made at the strategic levels, whereby it has to involve environmental policies, how to set environmental policies, social responsibilities, and all that. Then a decision where it involves global sourcing. When we talk of global sourcing, I believe procurement students should be clear about this. That is procuring beyond borders, or beyond the country's border, or just globally. You procure from an international market. So such decision has to involve strategic decisions. Sourcing process. How do we source this supplier? This is where I want you to put more attention. There are steps that are involved when we are selecting our supplier. The first is to identify or re-evaluate the need. What do we want to buy? If the need is already there, we re-evaluate it, we check it, we study it again, the specification of the need. If it's a vehicle, of a number of vehicles for a company, we check the specification of this vehicle. And these specifications are provided by the users, the person who is going to use this. So we restudy them and we check this specification, which is a re-evaluation or evaluation of the need, the item that we have to procure. Then from there, we define the user's requirement. During the re-evaluation, we look at what does the user want exactly. If we buy this vehicle, the person who is going to use it, if it is a company vehicle or an organization vehicle, the staffs who are going to use it, what are their requirements exactly? What kind of vehicle do they want? Then we make a decision of making or buying. This is where another decision comes in. Of course, it depends on the item. If the item is what the company can make or the organization can make, then it will decide. Or if it cannot make it, then it is acquired from out. Determine the purchase type. You look at type of purchasing, which purchasing process are you going to follow. Then the next part, after determining the purchasing type, we look at, of course, we mentioned that previously in our previous slides. Then conduct market analysis. We study the market. Where do we get this product? Where are the suppliers located? We look at that. That is all within the market analysis. Then we identify the potential suppliers. After we know where the market is, or the availability of this product in the market, then now we identify those suppliers who are in the market, who are going to give us that product. That is the next step. After that, we do the pre-screening of suppliers. We screen the suppliers. This could be through requesting quotations or proposals, or depending on what the company wants exactly. We already tackled this also. Last time we talked about the documents. We talked of requests for information, requests for proposal, requests for quotations, invitation to bid, invitation to tender. All this, we looked at this previously. That is in the previous semester, in other words. So we shall screen the supplier depending on what is needed and what document is requested from them. So they provide the information we need, we screen it, then we evaluate the final supplier list. We get specific list of suppliers we need. After the list, we can select like few, 3, 4. Then in the few, we select the supplier we need. That is the next step. Then supplier delivery. The supplier will, after selection, he will then provide to us what we need. Then lastly, the post-purchase evaluation. The purchasing process is also evaluated. When did the supplier deliver? Did he keep the lead time? Did he provide the required quantity or the required quality of the product that is needed? That evaluation is done as the last step. This is to help us in the next procurement or in the next sourcing process, so that we make a decision on how the next supplier will perform. Going to the next part, when we look at market analysis, we need to analyze which was a step in the sourcing process. Market analysis will focus on looking at the market and the suppliers who are available in the market. So why do we do this market analysis? It is to ensure, or it is to help us in forecasting demand, so that we can know what do we need at what time and how much do we need it at that time, so that we can plan or forecast our demand. To assess the price trend, so that we know how is the price changing in the market. From this period of time to this period of time, the price is to change, is like that. So we do market analysis to help us in that. To analyze material cost impact. Also, we looked at the impact of the materials on our production, if it's a production facility or a company. To check the alternative supply availabilities. What are the other available alternatives to cover up what we needed, so that when we are selecting the supplier or when we are evaluating the supplier, we can make clear decisions. Ensure supplier security. Also, that is very important. Supply security, ensure supply security. We need to know what security is needed so that the supply process can go efficiently. Then we looked at the external factors, also for the market analysis, or what the factors that affect during the market analysis. We have social factors, political factors, we have economical and technological trend, that is the best analysis. So when we look at the social factors, we look at how do people socialize in the market. When we look at how do customers socialize, or how do suppliers socialize, we evaluate based on that. Political, we look at the political environment within the market. Economical, we look at the price, how price is fluctuating in the market. Then technology, what technology is available to help us make this sourcing an effective one. So that is all under market analysis. Sources of data during the market analysis, or sources of data during the market analysis. There is primary and obviously secondary sources. When we look at primary, we look at the field research, survey, and interviews. Of course, primary source of data is when you collect the data direct from the source or the data provider. It could be through interviews, it could be surveying. So that is part of the source of data that we need to analyze the market. Secondary is you look at government reports, you look at international institutions, NGOs, or trade associations. Obviously, secondary is whereby we collect data from a source that has been already published or from a source that is already existing. That is the secondary source of data. Then let's look at the areas of sourcing information. We can source it from the market. Areas of sourcing information, market condition analysis. That is one area when we are sourcing information. We should look at references from other firms. We also look into the e-sourcing platforms, the websites. We also look at that. There are also other sourcing, the other sources of information. We also look at the supplier directories. There are books or documents that are published annually with addresses and products of different companies. That document can help us also to get that information. Performance assessment reports, there are reports that are provided. This could be by NGOs, by government. They are also another source of information. With that, I will say thank you so much. When we come back in the next session, we shall look at supplier appraisal as in the next section. Supplier appraisal, obviously, when we shall look at it, then we shall get more details in the next section. Thank you so much.